started. So I want to take this moment to officially welcome you to Taproot's webinar, Donating Your Skills During the Holiday Season. I really appreciate all of you joining. I know this is a busy week, a busy season for many of you, and so really heartwarming to see how much interest there is in this idea of giving back to social causes, using your time, using your professional skills throughout this season of giving. So excited to get to know each of you a little bit more and hopefully figure out ways to connect you with great causes. So I also really appreciate you joining and helping us celebrate Pro Bono Week, which may not be a week you knew that you were helping us celebrate by signing up for this event, but the last week of October is celebrated annually across the globe by pro bono organizations across the legal and business space. It's a time to really celebrate, acknowledge the great community service that takes place when folks do donate their professional talents and really celebrate the impact on communities across the globe that it helps contribute towards. And of course, mobilize more of this special kind of community service throughout the rest of the year as well. So happy Pro Bono Week. You can say that you're officially part of the celebrations just by being part of this event today. All right, we have a lot of great stuff to get into today, so I'm going to go ahead and get us rolling. So a quick introduction to myself, and while I'm introducing who I am, if you haven't already, please do use that chat box, introduce yourself, and maybe some skills that you're curious about donating to nonprofits or small businesses during the holiday season or the rest of the year. So my name is Kimberly Swartz. You can call me Kim. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm based out of the Charlotte, North Carolina area, and I'm Taproot's Senior Director of Community Engagement, which really just means that I do a lot of the program design and program management, and specifically, I lead up the Taproot Plus team, which you're going to hear a lot more about Taproot Plus a little bit later in the presentation. But it's a really wonderful team of people and a really fantastic program to participate in as well. So more to come on the Taproot Plus front. I also just want to share a few logistics before we really get rolling. So one very important one, we are recording this event. So if you do need to hop out partway through, I promise no hard feelings. So we'll share the recording link with you as soon as possible. So either later this afternoon or tomorrow morning. And so you can catch up on wherever you left off. I also have a Taproot colleague on the line today with me. So Megan Gillette is a Taproot Plus Senior Program Associate, and she is going to be managing chat. If there's like a big meaty question that would be great for us to discuss more in detail, she's going to share it with me, and we'll have a Q&A portion at the very end of the presentation. And she'll also be answering questions throughout. So if you see Megan Gillette popping up in the chat box, or it may even say Taproot, just know that you're hearing from her. And as I mentioned, we are going to do Q&A at the end of the presentation, and we're able to make slides available upon request as well. All right, so a little bit more about what we're specifically talking about today. So I'm kick things off by sharing a little bit more about our nonprofit, Taproot Foundation, because I know a few of you expressed on the registration form that you were new to our organization and wanted to just learn more about the ins and outs of what we do. So I'll start with the basics and of how we connect business professionals with opportunities to donate their skills to social good causes. And then I want to get into the benefits of volunteering your professional expertise. We're also specifically going to talk about giving back during the holiday season, right? That's the theme of this event. So we'll spend a good amount of time on that, and we'll talk about why nonprofits need us to step up for them and support their missions during this time. And then finally, we'll close things out with kind of some of the logistics of how to volunteer through Taproot, and some best practices for pro bono consulting to keep in mind. And as I mentioned, we are going to try and save time for Q&A at the end of the event as well. All right, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and get things going. So let's have you get a little introduction to Taproot. So, as some of you may know, we're a nonprofit and we exist to support our fellow nonprofits. Taproot was founded back in 2001 with the knowledge that there's a massive resource gap present in the social sector. Organizations who may very well have the solutions to our world's most pressing social challenges simply don't have the financial means, staff capacity, or support from institutions to carry out their missions to their fullest extent. And so that's really where Taproot comes in. So we're working to close that resource gap by mobilizing skilled volunteers from the corporate space in order to advance equitable access to resources. So we're trying to democratize the access to these really valuable forms of support that oftentimes smaller organizations aren't able to afford. And so our programs are open to all nonprofit organizations across the United States, as well as fiscally sponsored organizations, public schools, public libraries, etc., regardless of their mission area, their budget size, or the years that they've been in operation. We're also available in a few other countries around the world as well. So access and inclusive access is a really huge part of what we do here at Taproot. And so as part of that, I do just want to call out that Taproot doesn't charge nonprofits any fee for accessing service through our organization. And I know this is a frequently asked question, so I want to address it right up front, because this is really an area where we differ from other volunteerism and pro bono intermediaries. And it really helps maintain that inclusive access to our programs that I was speaking about before. So at the end of the day, just think of Taproot. We're a nonprofit supporting nonprofits, and we do that by really empowering and enabling skills-based volunteerism. So a little bit more about what Taproot means for volunteers. So you can see some of our impact stats here on the slide. One note that I mentioned really briefly earlier, we do have these slides available upon request after the event, so definitely reach out if that would be a helpful resource for you, because I may not cover every single bullet or every single stat you see on these slides, but you're more than welcome to dig in after the fact. So you can get to know the work that we do with professionals just like you. In the past 20 years, we've worked with tens of thousands of volunteers. We focus in the skill areas of marketing and communications, business development and finance, IT and technology, HR and leadership development, operations, and other business facets of work. So where we don't do pro bono and where we don't work with volunteers is in the legal space. There are partners out there who do legal pro bono really, really well. And so our nonprofit focuses on these other aspects of business professionalism, where we want to instill that same sort of ethic of doing good, building that into your career path. So we've worked with over 37,000 at this point, around 2 million in volunteer hours donated, amounting to around 300 million donated to social good organizations. And one really important thing that I want to highlight here is that we have virtual volunteer opportunities that update daily with over 19,000 different social good organizations from across issue areas. So on that point, I want to get to know what your social interests are, because throughout the event and in the follow-up for this event, my team and I would love to help get you connected with a cause that is especially near and dear to your heart. And so if you signed up for this event kind of knowing I'd really love to donate my skills to an organization working to expand education access, or working to fight for criminal justice reform or human rights, LGBTQ plus equality, ending homelessness or ending hunger, please shout that out in the chat, because we'd love to get that conversation started now. We're really here to help you get connected with these amazing causes, and so they get the support they need from professionals like you. So let me know what social causes are near and dear to your heart. What would you be interested in donating your skills to over the next few months? Awesome. Christina, thank you so much for sharing. Tanya, thank you so much for shouting that out. Access to technology for small community businesses. Yeah, prisoner reentry programs. Partner with anyone regarding military veterans. Absolutely. Veterans, that's actually one of the 22 issue areas that you saw on the last slide. Veterans and military families is one of those issue areas. So we certainly have a large group of organizations working in that topic specifically, Beatrice. Homeless youth. Yes, definitely, Andrea. Great. So please keep those social issue interests coming. We have access to this chat and we can use this to follow up with you and help make these connections after the event. So please keep dropping those in. I'm going to carry on with the rest of the slides, but if you feel comfortable sharing, please continue to do so. And I'll let you know throughout if we do have organizations available in those different areas. All right. And as you continue those share outs, I want to tell you a little bit more about skills-based volunteering because I've said this term a few times and I haven't really provided a definition for it yet. So I'll go ahead and do so now. We define it here at Taproot as a donation of one's abilities, talents, networks, and resources to social good organizations. So you may also hear it referred to as skilled volunteering or as pro bono consulting. I've also heard it referred to as just in-kind donations, which is a really good way to put it, but all have the same meaning. Pro bono ethic is really well established in the legal space, as I've mentioned before. And so a large part of Taproot's mission is to build this movement, this knowledge that giving back can support your professional journey and support your deep roots within your community, build your professional network, all of these amazing benefits, while also providing really valuable services to critical organizations. So skills-based volunteerism, it offers a ton of pluses for both nonprofits and volunteers. Obviously, for the nonprofit, for the social good organization you're working with skilled volunteers like you, it fills experience gaps for their organization, and it gives them more time and tools to do the things that they are uniquely great at, right? And so by using what you're uniquely really great at, you can help them, give them more space, more time, more energy back in their day so they can focus on things like eradicating child poverty, right? Skills-based volunteerism also adds to the nonprofit's capacity to serve its community because instead of having to spend budget on an external contractor or spend budget on hiring a staff member to manage Salesforce or their CRM platform, if they're able to find support pro bono, they can help take back some of that funds that would be used for internal infrastructure or capacity building, and they can use those funds towards mission-related activities, really expanding their services. So really, really valuable for their bottom line, which for nonprofits, their bottom line is serving more community members. And then for you as the individual, skills-based volunteerism also builds lasting connections between yourself and the organization that you're supporting. While it's not expected, so I can't sit here and give you 100% guarantee, it is very common to see volunteers and nonprofits develop strong relationships that extend well beyond their initial partnership through Taproot. So I can't tell you the number of times I've heard stories of volunteers starting by just doing 1 hour of consulting with a nonprofit or maybe working with them for a couple of weeks. And then they go on to become longtime donors of the organization, staff members of the organization, or even board members of that organization. So it's a really great way to get to know a mission area a little bit more and suss out, is that something that I want to spend more of my time and more of my energy on in the future? All right. So my next question for you, so I'm going to ask you to get active in the chat again. I'm really curious as to what you consider your professional superpower to be. And The reason that I ask this is because one of the big hurdles that I often hear from folks who are new to the idea of skills-based volunteerism is, how do my skills translate into very specific nonprofit needs? There's a bit of imposter syndrome there, right? Like, do I have something that these organizations would even benefit from? And I guarantee you the answer is yes, but I want to impact that a little bit. I would love for some audience participation here. Please drop your professional superpowers, drop those skills, experiences that you'd be interested in potentially donating to a good cause. And I'll take those skill share outs and provide some examples of pro bono partnerships or nonprofit needs that I've seen recently. So you can start to build this picture of how your professional expertise could match up to these nonprofit challenges. All right, so I'm going to jump on Tehal's share out of Salesforce admin. I shared earlier, Taproot Foundation, we are a nonprofit ourselves. We have around 40 staff members. So while we have a big, bold, ambitious mission, we are a relatively small organization. We do not have a Salesforce administrator on staff. And so in the past, when we've had questions about how can we run a report that shows us projected revenue from XYZ partners, or could we potentially build out a report that our team leaders could look at to see how staff time is matching up against these different client-related responsibilities? How would we go about doing that? We actually work with Salesforce volunteers to help us build out those capacity items to help us shore up our internal infrastructure so that we can then use that budget to make Taproot Plus, this open access program, totally free of cost for nonprofits. So again, saving money to put towards our bottom line. Andrea, I see that you put in UX design and graphic design. I can't tell you the number of organizations that come to Taproot saying, we have a website, but I feel like it doesn't accurately represent who we are and what we're doing. We don't have any website designers or developers on staff. And so it's just me and I am not a marketer. Like, what should I do? And they really would benefit from that special touch of a UX designer who could go through their current website and help them match up what the experience of navigating their site should be with the needs of their stakeholders. So using your skill set on building user personas and keeping up with the user experience, I can't tell you how hugely valuable that is for organizations and how desperately needed it is for many organizations. One good thing to keep in mind is that a lot of the teams that Taproot works with are smaller organizations. So these are nonprofits that maybe are completely volunteer run. So they have no paid staff members, or they maybe only have one or two full-time paid staff members. So really small organizations where these donations of skills go a really long way. I'll do one more. Project management, market research, absolutely. So project management is not necessarily a skill set that nonprofits are able to maintain on staff. It's something that nonprofit staff members do build up skills in because they're forced to when they're running community events or running a fundraising event. They're able to develop those competencies as they go, but it's not typically a profession that you'll see or a position that you'll see within a nonprofit organization, like a full-time project manager. So that is an incredibly valuable infrastructure addition that you as a pro bono consultant can make to an organization's team, where you go in and evaluate, all right, here is our typical process for managing large-scale initiatives or managing gala preparation, and assess what the current process is, and then make recommendations for here's how we can create some efficiencies in the future. Here's the documentation that needs to be created. And then here are some recommendations for free or low cost tools that could assist with your project management in the future. So that's a really great one to keep in mind. So if there's any other project managers out there, that's a really big need for organizations at this point. All right, so please do keep sharing. As I mentioned, my team and I are going to use these chats. We'll reach out to you after the event, and we'll use this information to help you get connected with issue areas that you're really passionate about and using these skill sets that you're shouting out to us now. But as I keep us moving through the deck, I do just want to touch on some of these other benefits for you personally that come from the act of donating your skills to good causes. So the four main ones that I want to touch on here, although this certainly isn't an exhaustive list, there's certainly much to be said about the sense of fulfillment that you get from donating your skills and working with great causes, and just education on these different social issues and challenges impacting community members. That is incredibly valuable as a benefit as well. But these are the four that I'm going to touch on today. And I want to start with this idea of supporting social good causes, supporting these important initiatives. And so I just want to share a little bit of background context as to why we're holding this event when we are, and some of the calls to action that we're going to make, some of the ways we're going to push all of you to step up in support of organizations at this point. Because, large publications over the past several months, really throughout 2023, have found that contributions from foundations, individuals, and corporations have seen that 2022 is one of the worst years in philanthropy history. Giving dropped over 10% after inflation, which is an incredibly rare occurrence since the advent of these types of annual tracking surveys. Nonprofits continue to report difficulties with volunteer recruitment and engagement, with numerous national surveys spotlighting the challenges that nonprofits face in finding hands-on, which is like traditional volunteers you think about when you go to a soup kitchen or when you go help build a house. So they've reported challenges in finding those hands-on local volunteers, as well as challenges with finding skills-based volunteers or board members. And community members, these are conversations that I've had with Taproot volunteers myself. Community members report struggling with lack of time, continuing stressors due to the ongoing pandemic, uncertainty that their donations will make a difference. So there are reasons for some of these declines in giving and support that I do want to acknowledge, but it doesn't change the fact that community needs continue to increase. And so nonprofits are continuing to be asked to do more and more to serve our community members, while funding and volunteer support for nonprofits declines, which is a really troubling situation that we all have the power to do something about, right? And so the thing I want to highlight about skills-based volunteerism is that making a difference alongside a social cause that you personally care about is 100% the biggest benefit of volunteering your professional skills. So I'm going to talk through some professional and some career development benefits, but I want to make sure that we're anchored in this statement that getting the opportunity to support great causes is 100% the biggest benefit, the biggest takeaway from skills-based giving. And so I also just want to highlight that we know that skills-based volunteerism and pro bono consulting, it works for nonprofits. In 2022, 84% of Taproot's nonprofit partners reported that the work of their skilled volunteer partner directly led to the increased effectiveness of their mission. 47% reported that the pro bono donations resulted in the increased reach of their mission. So we know it's helping them save money on their bottom line, and we know it's helping them increase the quality and reach of their mission. And sharing your professional skills with nonprofits is also financially valuable. So Taproot, back in 2011 originally, although it was actually 2009 originally. And then we've updated it several times over the past few years in collaboration with fellow nonprofit chief executives for corporate purpose, CECP. We established the first average hourly value of skills-based volunteerism. And right now that stands at $195 per hour. Many nonprofits in the Taproot community are operating on an incredibly limited budget and may even be funding operations personally because it's such a personal cause and they are the founder and leader of that cause, which means that bringing in paid consultants and contractors or staff members is not feasible for their organizations. Based on our valuation, the skilled support provided during these multi-week partnerships, typically a Taproot project is around 30 hours of volunteer time, which means that per Taproot project, you're roughly donating around $6,000 of services to that nonprofit organization. And that's without even considering the long-term impact that you're making on that organization's resiliency and sustainability. I don't know about all of you, but it's definitely not in my family's budget to make a $6,000 financial donation to all of the organizations that I care about during this holiday season. You're very blessed if you are in that position, and I highly encourage you to make financial donations if you are in that position, but it's just not always a reality for all of us. And so I really love the option of pro bono consulting because it gives me that opportunity to make a really profound contribution to a cause that I personally care about. And I want to make sure that it has a chance for success in the future and that it has the opportunity to serve more community members in the future. And so on that topic, I do want to talk a little bit more about Taproot's Holiday Volunteerism Drive, because I know you heard about it a little bit in the invitation for this event and, of course, when you were signing up. But Taproot acknowledges, the holiday season is a really critical period for organizations as they fundraise for resources to fuel their mission for the following year. But unfortunately, due to some of those factors we talked about a couple minutes ago, inflation, pandemic, natural disasters, etc., 2023 has been a tougher year than most for social good orgs, and they're reporting these historically low levels of volunteerism and financial donations. And so in response to these challenges, our organization has just kicked off a holiday volunteerism drive to help nonprofits connect with crucial in-kind support during the season of giving. Skill donations through Taproot begin at just 1 hour. They're virtual, they're flexible opportunities to give back with organizations working across some of the issue areas that you all highlighted in the chat earlier. Ending hunger, advancing education access, protecting animals, upon many, many more. And so just some of our goals really quickly, what you'll be a part of if you choose to participate. We're working to spread awareness of skills-based volunteerism, that this can be a really impactful form of community service to engage in. So some things to think about, even if now isn't the perfect time for you to work with a nonprofit, I understand schedules are really, really busy. And so if now doesn't make sense for you to donate some of your time to an organization, just by creating your Taproot account and expressing interest in giving back is a really perfect way to participate because it helps us shore up resourcing for 2024 for our network of nonprofits and small businesses. And then I would also add that advocacy is huge for us. Taproot's a nonprofit with a tiny marketing team and an even smaller ad budget. And so this form of volunteerism isn't top of mind for many people as their minds immediately go to hands-on or traditional volunteerism. And so, which is an important type of service in and of itself too, don't get me wrong. But consider the higher value of donating the skills you're uniquely talented at. So share about skills-based volunteering and pro bono consulting on LinkedIn and with colleagues, if that's something that you've already successfully done. I know we have I noticed in the chat, a few experienced pro bono consultants on the line. That's beautiful. A huge act of advocacy that you could do over the holiday season is talk to your friends, colleagues, professional networks. LinkedIn's a great place for that, to help them get involved, get knowledgeable, that this type of donation is something that they can and should be thinking about. And that type of share out is something that we can help with. We have plenty of templates and resources to assist with that. And some of our other goals, obviously at the end of the day, it all comes down to getting more resources for more organizations. It's pretty self-explanatory. That's why we're all here. We all want to be a part of positive social change. And with the competition for individual donations and philanthropic or corporate funding, nonprofits really are relying on us for this influx of in-kind capacity building resources. So I will say, by coming to this event, by registering for this one, you have officially participated in Taproot's Holiday Volunteerism Drive. So a big thank you for taking that first step. But I would be remiss if I didn't say we'd love to work together with you even more deeply over these winter months as we're running this campaign. So definitely encourage you, create your Taproot Plus account, apply to help a nonprofit, or join us on Giving Tuesday, where we're going to be running a live application event where Taproot staff are going to be giving really live, curated best practices on pro bono consulting and providing tailored recommendations for volunteer opportunities that we think you would be great at. So I think we'll share a lot of those links in the follow-up email, and I think my colleague Megan is sharing some as well. But really appreciate you being part of today's event, helping us kind of kick off this campaign. And I'm hoping that there'll be more opportunities for us to work together over the course of the next few months. But I want to get back to talking more about some of these benefits of donating your professional skills. Obviously, the opportunity to give back and learn more about a critical social issue is the number one, but there's definitely some other pluses. One would be expanding your network. Skills-based volunteerism also often involves interacting with people that you don't know, and it's an excellent opportunity to just make those new professional connections. This applies geographically. You could choose to give back to an organization that's based in your local area, or you could choose to give back to an organization who's in a new city or state or even country. And maybe it's in a city that you used to live in. I am currently based in Charlotte, North Carolina, but I moved here from Brooklyn, New York. And so one of the ways that I like to stay connected to Brooklyn is by donating skills, volunteering with New York or Brooklyn-based nonprofit organizations to help maintain that sense of community that I feel. Another big benefit to this type of service would be building your resume. And so I'm not sure if anyone here is in the position where maybe they're looking to make a leap to a new role, or whether it's internally at the company you're currently with, or maybe you're looking for a position elsewhere. But featuring volunteer work on your resume is a great way to boost your job applicants' chances. According to The Guardian, 75% of employers actually do admit that adding volunteer work on a resume does boost your chances of getting hired by their firm or by their company. And Deloitte research also backs this up as well, where findings confirmed that including this experience on a resume makes candidates significantly more attractive to employers. It also shows the relevancy and the flexibility of your skill set and expertise as well, right? By taking your corporate professional skill set and applying it in a nonprofit environment, you've shown a really good example of experiential learning. You've gone into a new team, a new environment, new conditions, and you've still been able to work effectively. So that sense of collaboration, this is a great way to kind of show that soft skill in a very tangible way on your resume, on your LinkedIn portfolio, or on your LinkedIn profile, or on your online portfolio as well. And then the last benefit that I want to call out here is around strengthening skills. So the one thing that I will say is that pro bono consulting is a great place to stretch existing skill sets in a new environment. It's not a great place for people who are looking to use skills for the first time, because these organizations are As I've mentioned, incredibly small team sizes. They probably don't have an employee who's specialized in the same area that you are. So you shouldn't rely on nonprofit leaders to be like a mentor or a supervisor for you in the work that you're doing. You should rely on them for project management and project coordination support throughout your pro bono engagement, that's for sure. But you shouldn't expect them to be able to answer like detailed technical questions about your work. So be prepared for some level of independent work throughout the pro bono. But in terms of skill building, it helps reinforce teamwork, communication, leadership, problem solving, and other skills that are really, really valuable in professional settings and personal settings as well, I would argue. And by including them on your resume, you can really showcase your ability to work effectively with others. I think it also just shows commitment, right? It shows your values. It shows who you are as a person, and makes you just appear as much more well-rounded as an individual versus other candidates, other people who haven't chosen to showcase their volunteerism. All right, so hopefully after seeing all of those benefits, you are sold, you're ready to go ahead and dive in. So I'm going to quickly zoom through how to donate your skills during the holiday season and definitely beyond through Taproot. So I'm going to get a little technical here just as we go through navigating the program, and then we'll go ahead and break for Q&A. So something I would definitely recommend if you haven't already is create your Taproot volunteer profile, because that's going to be the front door for everything else that we're talking about today, for finding opportunities to donate your skills, finding opportunities to work with these social good organizations. So I know my colleague Megan has put a link up at the top of the screen. If you haven't already created your account, definitely recommend doing so now. And do that as we're talking. I won't mind at all if you have that up on your other screen and you're going through the sign-up process as we're chatting. That way I can answer any questions that you're running into while we're interacting with each other live during this event. So Taproot Plus is our free online nonprofit volunteer matchmaking platform. It's the front door to accessing services through our nonprofit, as I mentioned. And so it's free to have an account, to request services, to leverage Taproot's resources. We are a virtual community, and so primarily the project and consultation call opportunities you'll see through Taproot are going to be virtual in nature, but we do have some in-person options available as well when the nonprofit needs it. And we have around 150,000 volunteers from the worlds of IT, business strategy, HR, marketing, software development, design, operations, and more. As you'll see here on the slide, again, it's just reiterating we're accessible across the United States, but we are also open and accessible in the UK, the EU, Canada, and India. And all of our opportunities, it is truly very flexible. We start at just 1-hour consultation calls. And the longest opportunity we have are multi-week projects where you'll donate around 3 to 5 hours of your time per week to a nonprofit to get to a really discrete outcome or end goal. This is also by creating a Taproot account or Taproot Plus account, you'll have access to any partner-sponsored programming that becomes available throughout the year. So I'll pause and just share a little bit more information on this part. So Taproot, we're a nonprofit ourselves. This platform is free. So one of the frequently asked questions that I get is, well, how is this service free? How do you fund yourself? So Taproot, we're a nonprofit, so we source donations, much like other organizations, from institutions and from individual donors. But we also have a team within our organization that act as a consultancy practice as we work with corporations and grant makers to help them build out their own employee engagement, employee volunteerism programs internally. And so once we build the strategy for their volunteerism and then execute those pro bono programs, many of those employees then join us in the Taproot Plus ecosystem. And the nonprofits that we're matching with these corporate volunteers are oftentimes also from the Taproot Plus community. So like I said, this is really the front door. Once you have an account here, you'll receive emails and notifications about these other pro bono events or long-term team-based programs. You'll receive all of the updates about that with whatever email that you use to create your Taproot Plus account. So hopefully that heads off any questions about Taproot's funding or team-based opportunities, because they are available. It's just when funding allows us to make it available to you. And then, of course, by creating an account on Taproot Plus, you'll have access to skills-based volunteerism resources and best practices, networking events. We host panels, community events fairly frequently, and of course, user support from the national leader in skills-based volunteerism. So I think I'll just zoom through these slides, but again, you'll have access to the recording and can request the deck as needed, but just some quick instructions on how to create an account. You can choose to link it to your LinkedIn profile to make it a little easier. To find a volunteer opportunity, you're going to use the Browse Opportunities page. This is the marketplace. This is where you'll see all of the open opportunities. I believe we have over 400 to 500 open opportunities right now. So with organizations across the US and some of those other regions that I mentioned as well, they range from these 1-hour consultations, which we call sessions, to multi-week partnerships, which we call projects. And so I want to talk a little bit more about each of those. Let's start with sessions first. So sessions are maybe my favorite form of pro bono, at least recently. I've been doing a lot of sessions lately myself because my calendar is pretty packed these days. And so these are just so flexible, and it's a really quick way to make a substantial impact on an organization. So these are 1-hour, one-time consultation calls. So I want to make sure that's clear. By signing up for one of these sessions, it is just a 60-minute call. You're not signing yourself up for any future work after that point. Although, of course, if you agree to continue partnering with a nonprofit, then that is totally up to you. But all Taproot asks is that you do have a 1-hour call with them. It's generally focused on brainstorming or problem solving. So let me give a couple examples of sessions that I've volunteered for recently. There was an organization who was looking to update their volunteer programs. And so I worked with them just in the 60 minutes to think through different ways they could approach volunteer recruitment in their local community, using social media, using their email channels, as well as using their board members. And I also spoke about some incentives and structure they could offer to volunteers to help with the retention aspect of once you bring a volunteer in, you really want to make sure that they are delighted with their experience. And so they're more likely to volunteer with you in the future. I've also personally used sessions. So as I mentioned, nonprofit professional myself. So I try and practice what I preach when I can. And so I recently was given session support when I was working on behalf of an organization that needed to revamp their imagery online. And so I met with a photographer just through one of these calls, and they gave me advice on ways I could empower staff members to use their iPhone or Android and just take better pictures at events. And I could give them just more instructions on like the appropriateness of different shots, like what to ask in the photo release form, all of the logistics, and all of just like the art direction of taking better photos so that we can feature better things on the website. So sessions can take many forms, usually brainstorming, problem solving related. I want to move on to talking about projects. These are the multi-week, kind of longer term partnerships that I mentioned earlier. And so these typically last anywhere from 2 to 10 weeks in duration. And you, as the volunteer, would be donating around 2 to 5 hours of your time per week. You're going to be working towards a very specific end goal. So, some project examples would be like developing an HR handbook for an organization, creating 10 graphics to use on social media, conducting a website UX audit and drafting recommendations for next steps, conducting market research to feed into a competitive analysis. So again, very specific scopes of work, so that you as the volunteer have a success criteria of what you're working towards, of what your donation of time and skills is building towards. I recently used a project myself where I worked with a volunteer who did research for me on potential community partners in Canada, which was a new country that Taproot Plus became available in. And I did not have the capacity to do research on, okay, well, who in this space should I notify that our services now exist? Because I don't have an ad budget, right? And I don't have connections in the area. So can we do some research to just help me build a foundation of the organizations I should be knowledgeable of and who I should be reaching out to and partnering with? And so they created kind of a really in-depth partnership analysis for me that I'm still using to this day. So hopefully that's a helpful example. But I am seeing that we've got several questions in the chat, so I want to make sure that we have time for Q&A. So I'll move ahead right to that and catch up with some of the things that have been dropped in the box. But I do want to make it clear that this help@taprootplus.org email that you see on this slide is available to you 24/7. So actual human staff members, I promise, the notes you receive from Taproot are from human beings. We have a team of folks just dedicated to user support. And I can't speak highly enough about the team members. Megan is one of them, the Taproot staff member who's been interacting with you in the chat. So really, really dedicated team who our job is to assist you and help make it easier for you to connect with nonprofits and also manage your relationships with them along the way. So please do be really communicative with the help desk. Let us know what we could be doing to support your volunteerism. Let us know how we can help you navigate the platform. Whatever you need, don't hesitate to reach out to that help desk. All right, so I'm seeing a question here around, has anyone experienced a scenario where listing a volunteer professional experience on their resume causes a potential paying employer to offer lower wages since I'm already willing to do the work for free? It's an interesting question, Lauren, and I do appreciate your caution around it. I can personally share I have never experienced that feedback being shared with me. I have worked with many, many volunteers and other volunteerism intermediaries as well, intermediary organizations as well, and this hasn't come up. The one area where you may need to be more cognizant of this is if you're applying to work at a nonprofit organization, because no corporation is going to look at your resume, no for-profit is going to look at your resume and say, oh, they did marketing strategy support for free for a nonprofit, we should try and undercut them. That's not going to happen. If anything, that's a bartering chip for you to use to get higher salary, because not only do you have years of professional experience, but you effectively were doing two jobs at the same time because you were doing pro bono experience at the same time you were doing your professional paid experience. So if anything, it's a bartering chip for you to advocate for higher salary with any for-profit organization. With nonprofit organizations, they may see the pro bono experience and say, oh, this person has nonprofit experience. that's great. I'm not going to need to educate them as much on how things differ in our world versus a for-profit world. So again, I think it always really nets out as a positive. And I would just really encourage you to use that as a point of personal advocacy, and as a bartering chip for you to increase the rate in which that you're paid for your work. So I'm seeing a question here around, does Taproot or the company provide tools needed to do the job? For example, paying for stock photography or imaging on social media content. So it's a good question. Taproot does not pay stipends for work. So that's just something to keep in mind. I know I'm saying that super, super bluntly and directly, but I want to make sure I'm not pulling the wool over anyone's eyes. So Taproot, if the volunteer and the nonprofit are working together on a website design project, and the volunteer makes a list of recommendations for, I think you need these photos, I think you need this platform to host the site on, I think you need this design company to actually execute, Taproot is not going to pay for those charges. In fact, it's something that you as the consultant, that needs to be part of the initial conversation, kickoff conversations you're having with the nonprofit about the project you're completing for them. What is your budget for implementation and execution of this work? Because if they have a zero budget, you should not be making recommendations for paid photos or for paid social media content, right? So define that when you're creating your scope of work during the kickoff call with the organization. You should always define what's in scope and what's out of scope, and you should define the budget and timeline expectations. So really good question, and I'm glad I had a chance to clarify that. So I'm seeing another question here. How does Taproot build its network of nonprofits? What does the matchmaking process look like? So how do we build the network of nonprofits? I'll start with that one. We have been around for 20 plus years now, and really we're the first organization providing this type of in-kind support. And so word of mouth has been huge. Going deep, building deep and lasting relationships with nonprofits across the United States has been really huge. Many of the organizations that we work with in 2023, we've been working with for over a decade at this point. So I'll start there. But another way that we reach new nonprofits is through community events just like this one, right? Putting it out to our network. Hey, we're going to host this webinar, inviting new folks. Please help us spread the word, right? So leaning on our community members as advocates themselves is really big. We also regularly work with nonprofit associations, other like nonprofit intermediary organizations, like National Council of Nonprofits is a good example. Giving Tuesday is another good example of community partners who we work with because they have really amazing resources that we share with our nonprofit network, and we have really amazing resources that they want to share with their networks as well. So kind of cross-pollination. And then what does the matchmaking process look like? So really good question. When you apply for an opportunity, you will share a statement of work. The nonprofit will get to see that, your Taproot profile, your LinkedIn profile, if you've chosen to connect it, and an online resume, if you've chosen to connect that as well. The volunteer will look through those things and they will decide, all right, this looks great. I'm going to set up a phone interview to see if we're both ready to take the next step with one another. And so Taproot, our system, helps you set up that phone interview if the nonprofit has accepted your application to go to that next phase. And during that interview, it's really your chance to vet the organization, just like the organization is vetting you. So treat this like you would a paid job opportunity. Make sure you know that the nonprofit is like ready to make you a success in this role. Do they have the materials that you're going to need to execute the project with? So for instance, if you're coming in for a social media strategy project, it's totally reasonable for you to ask, tell me about your marketing strategy. What are your goals for the next year? And why do you want to use social media to accomplish those? Right? Because if the nonprofit isn't able to provide ways that you'll know that you're going to be set up for success, then it's totally fair for you to walk away and match with and potentially apply and match with another organization who's better prepared for your volunteerism in the first place. And then after that interview call, Taproot will send an email to both of you asking, how did the interview go? Would you officially like to work together? And after that point, if you say yes, then Taproot checks in with you on a weekly basis just to see if everything's going well. And if you ever say there's a problem, our staff members step in to mediate the situation and see what needs to be done to continue moving it forward. So hopefully that answers your question, but let me know if any other detail would be interesting. And yeah, I appreciate May, who dropped in. The pro bono experience might be a different industry, thus adding even more value to your skills. I think that's 100% right. It's only additive. And it's only an extra chip for you to play in that negotiation process in an interview and when you're negotiating salary. All right, I'm just scrolling through, making sure I didn't miss anything, but please, if you have an open question and I haven't responded to it, just drop that in the chat and I'll try and get to it really quickly before we are at the end of the event. All right, I'm not seeing anything come in, but that's totally fine. The conversation does not have to end here. So you have the help desk email, but also you'll be receiving a note from Taproot either later today or tomorrow morning, where we will provide the recording of the event, the links to some of the articles I mentioned, as well as the Giving Tuesday event, where we want to connect as many nonprofits with resources during that really big day of fundraising as possible. So would love to have you at our live event. It should be a really fun one. So we'll make sure we share that link with you in the follow-up as well. And as I mentioned, we're in the midst of this big push to drive volunteer activity, engagement. And so if you're interested in sharing about skills-based volunteerism with your friends, with your company, with your team, please let me know, let my team know if we can be helpful in helping you be an advocate, a pro bono ambassador. Otherwise, we'll keep in touch about ways we can get you connected with some of those cause areas and using those skill sets that you dropped in the chat. I really do appreciate you taking the time to share those with us. All right, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for sharing an hour of your time with us, and looking forward to staying in touch throughout the holidays. Bye, everyone.